Hey, Joe Gilder here. I now have a cat and a dog in the studio. I don't know if you can see them, but never mind the animals. Welcome to another episode of Mix Together. We dealt with the mix bus processing in the last video, and to me, I feel like it was one of the better examples of mix bus processing and what it does that I've done in a while. So if you haven't watched that video, highly recommend going back and checking out that episode. A link to the full playlist, if you're on YouTube, will be below, so you can check that out. What are you doing? Okay, now he's up. Okay, that sounds like the cat just jumped up the top of. Anyway, so now today we're gonna get into probably proper mixing, and you may think, he spent a long time not actually using EQ yet. Exactly. A, the tracks are good, and B, I've done the things I think are more important up to this point. We're just now getting to the point where I think we're ready to do some actual quote unquote mixing. And we're going to turn those background vocals back to purple. Oh, wait, that's not a background. This is a lead. All right, lead vocals are orange, backgrounds are purple. Why? Because I said so. So the first thing I want to do is get to this loudest section of the song, and I want to kick off with the drums. So I'm going to come in and turn all the other faders down, and we're going to really work on this drum sound and get it really working. So as you may recall, there is no kick drum in this drum sound. There's only a handful. These blue tracks of the drums, there's only a handful of drums. We've got a floor tom, which is behaving as a kick, and we've got two snare drums, a shaker, and a tambourine. So not going to take long to work with it, but I'd like to work with it a little bit and see if I can get it sounding amazing. So let's just take a listen and see what we got. Sorry about that. My wife came down to the studio. We have this epic battle where neither of us is good at putting the keys back where they go. I happen to have both sets of keys in the studio, and she had to go pick up the kids. That's not funny. Okay, let's listen to this tom or this drum set again. Okay, so I dig the fullness of that floor tom. There's a whole lot of resonance there, right? Boom, boom. It's resonating the entire time. It's not the worst thing in the world, but let's just look at an EQ and just see kind of frequency-wise what's happening there. Okay, so it's down here in like the 40 hertz range. If we just for giggles, rolled that off, would it kill the tone of the drum? I don't know. Let's see. Okay, high pass filter wasn't really the right choice. Let's try this. Let's find the frequency and just cut it pretty dramatically and see if that helps. No, I think a lot of the girth and the body of that drum is going to come in from that frequency range. So what are our other options? I'm surprised I'm saying this, but I think the only option we really have the one option I want to try is to put a gate or an expander on the track. So if you're familiar with gates, I don't use them all that much, but the idea is it lets the sound through, and then when the sound stops playing, it turns it down. So I don't need to turn it down all the way. I just need to turn it down a little bit, which is what this range setting is for. We can adjust the attack and release and see if we can get it sounding right. I always get confused between gates and expanders. I think gates are more like a limiter in that they just open and shut. And then an expander kind of has a kind of a ratio of how quickly it closes. A gate's a little simpler to operate, so we'll use that. Well, that's not what I want to see. Okay, so What we're going to do is first set the range. How much is it going to turn down the drum? I would say no more than 18 to 20 dB between hits. Now, when it comes back, it needs to come back pretty quickly. So I'm going to set the attack to 1 millisecond and the release fairly quickly because I just want it to essentially just, when the drum stops hitting, to turn down and then to turn back up really quick when it hits and then turn back down again. That's the idea of what I want. So let's just hit play and see if we can adjust this threshold to get it working. Okay, so some of the things we want to make sure we get, if we look at the waveform right here. So just, this is a great example. He hits it here. We want to catch that boom, that little light hit before the big hit. So we don't want to have the gate so aggressive that we don't get those notes. So if it was up like this, okay, that's not letting enough sound through. So let's bring it down some more and let's just keep listening. So the snare drum sound is triggering it as well, but I think that's okay. I like how the kick doesn't have as much rumble as it did before. So let's listen again. We turn off the gate, listen to how much more rumble there is between hits. You may hear that, and you may think, no big deal, you're not going to hear that in the mix. It's one of those things that might actually cause problems in the mix. You're sitting there and you're like, it's just too indistinct and kind of rumbly, I don't know what it is, and you're messing with the bass and you're EQing the kick and you don't realize it's this 60 hertz ringing that's just happening the entire time. So I think that gate is going to help. If we listen to our entire drum kit now, oh, sorry, the gate is still off. Let's turn the gate back on and now let's listen. That feels a little too obvious. We can hear the gate go foo. So let's do this. Let's make the release a little bit longer so that it more slowly turns it down. Yeah, that feels better. That feels like if they had dampened the drum a little bit better, it maybe wouldn't have been ringing as much. So if we put some, what's that, moon gel, or sometimes drummers put a wallet on the drum, something that'll just, it'll allow it to resonate but then kind of die out quicker. We're essentially doing that with this gate, and I think that's working okay. Okay, so he doesn't hit the snare all that much, but let's just make sure we get a decent sound out of that. So the bottom snare sounds exactly like you'd expect a bottom snare to sound like. The top snare, it's got some ring to it. You hear that? Let's put an EQ just on that one and find that frequency. There it is. Once you find it, it's pretty obvious because it rings no matter how softly or hard he hits the drum. So let's notch that bad boy out. So that feels good. There's one more. Hoo, boo. I kind of want to take that one down a little bit as well. That's it. So those two frequencies, if you can't read it on your screen, are 338 and 241. If we take those out, turn the EQ off. So for me, when I do this, and you may have seen me do this before, I'm going to leave that EQ as its own thing. I'll probably EQ the snare drum entirely, but that EQ stays there as like my notch EQ, so it's a separate thing from everything else. Now I'm going to EQ the snare itself because it's giving me a little bit of a headache. Turn that mic down a little bit. Okay, let me show you what I did. Just a couple EQ moves. There's a lot of thickness down here in this frequency right here. It's not so much something to notch out as it is more of a group of frequencies. So I just brought it down so it's a little more even. And now I can maybe introduce a little bit of bottom end on top of that. So this one frequency is really poking out. I need it to be more balanced so I can boost all those frequencies and not just that pokey frequency, if that makes sense. Okay, there's another ring I was hearing. I was hearing a hoo, boo. Sounds like it's the snare, but it's not. When you solo the snare, it's not there. It's actually the tom resonating when the snare hits. Listen to the tom on the snare hits. It's got this sympathetic vibration ringing thing. Let's see if we can take care of that real quick. Okay, I think that's it. I always like taking a little bit of mid-range out of toms and kick drums. It just takes away some of the boxiness that's there. So you may notice I've already broken my own rule, so to speak. I've done a lot of work on the individual tracks and not on the bus. Well, it's just what it needed. There was some ringing I needed to take care of. That resonating in the tom, all stuff I couldn't do from the bus. But now I could, if I want to now, come do some stuff on the drum bus, which is what I will do. I'll start with a compressor because I'm liking the sound that I'm getting. I don't want to EQ it necessarily. I want to try compressing it first. So I'm going to try this setting, 30 millisecond attack, 50 millisecond release, and just see kind of what that sounds like on the entire drum bus. Just EQ'd out a little bit of that low 40 hertz ring in the tom. Just a little bit of it was still coming through a little much, but I kind of like the compression sound here. Now, overall, I think the drum kit with the compression could use maybe a little EQ. It's a little mid-rangey. So let's do that now. That seemed to really help. Let me turn that on and off so you can hear the difference. There's a frequency kind of a right in there. Let me boost it and show you right in here. Mostly on the snare, but also a little bit on the kick, which is why it makes sense to do this at the bus level. Pull it down and everything feels a little tighter. Okay, so obviously we're just listening to the drums. We'll add in bass and the guitars and all that as we go, and we will come back and revisit the drum sound to see if it's still working. But I'm pretty happy with that, especially if we kind of overlook let's see, hang on. There's a way to turn off all these plugins at once. Right here. So here is our drum sound with no plugins on it. Feels a little unmixed. And now here it is with, of course, now they're not coming back on. And then here it is with all the plugins added back in. So I'm going to do that comparison again. It is also turning off my mix bus compression. It's just kind of what that button does. It turns all plugins on and off. But you'll get the big difference. The drums go from sounding okay to kind of raw recordings to tight and a little punchier and more polished with the changes that we've made. So we'll start with them off, the plugins off, and then turn them on, and you'll hear how they get like they have a lot more clarity. Still not completely happy with that resonance in the kick drum for now. It may continue to be an issue, or once we introduce bass, guitar, and vocals, it may disappear and not be as big of an issue. I think we've tamed it enough with the gate to where it's not going to be problematic later on from a rumbly standpoint, but I still may not be happy with the tone overall. So I'm sure we'll probably revisit the drums in the future, but we've essentially mixed our drums. Now, you could argue that, hey, let's add some room reverb to them. And that may be a good idea. Actually, let's do that real quick right now just to see what that sounds like. This is a small studio space reverb setting with the low frequencies rolled off. I'm inclined to leave this mix pretty dry, although I do want to try one other. If you're familiar with the open air plugin in Studio One, it's an impulse response reverb. And shush, my cat's meowing. And there's a good spring reverb that I bought from Studio One or from PreSonus. Essentially the impulse responses of this spring reverb, and I've just started using it in the last couple weeks, so I haven't even imported it into my template yet. But it's kind of cool on drums. Let's see what that sounds like. Kind of cool. If I roll off the low end with this EQ I have on my other reverbs, something to mess around with. I kind of like that. I'll leave it for now. May make more sense just to put the reverb off of the snare as opposed to the entire drum kit. But again, the entire drum kit is just a tom and a snare, and a shaker and a tambourine and another snare. So it's not like it's going across a ton of stuff either way. But I kind of like that little extra space. We'll leave it there. There's a good chance we'll take it off later, but I'm digging it so far, and it's time to move on into bass and other such fun things. So thanks for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one.